Paula, welcome. I'll dive straight in with my questions. San Diego is known for its strong maritime industry and research institutions. What challenges do local startups and companies face in scaling their innovations to the global market?
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here, and thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I can answer that. So we do have a really, as you say, a strong maritime and research sector here. Most of the challenges that our startups face are to scale are really, especially those that need to get in the water, are really permitting and regulatory challenges. So that's a common problem for almost any industry, not just the blue tech and the innovation industry in California. It's very difficult to get, projects or technologies in the water. So I would say that's the biggest hurdle, but that's something that we at the Port of San Diego can help support through our Blue Economy Incubator.
Right. And how can you and other stakeholders also work together, perhaps, to overcome these challenges, such as the one you just mentioned, while ensuring environmental protection?
Sure. I'll just give you a little background on the Port of San Diego in general to help answer that question. So the Port of San Diego was created by the state of California back in the 60s to manage a fair amount of tideland, so water and land rights around San Diego Bay. So San Diego Bay is the fourth largest bay in California, and is surrounded by 5 cities. One of them is San Diego. And when the port was created in the 60s, it was created to unify all of those cities to manage the water and the land rights around the bay on behalf of the citizens of California. So at the same time as creating a port, they also created us as a public agency. So we're not just a landlord, we're also a regulator and an operator too. So we work all over our region and with companies, across the globe, but regionally we work together with the research institutions and the industry here, like at the port, but also in San Diego and the greater Southern California area. Because we are a public agency, we have land and water rights and the ability to permit things easier than other locations. So there's a lot of innovation that is happening at the research institutions in blue tech and then climate tech as well. But there's also other ports where innovation is happening along the west coast of the US at ports, but not port-led. So because we have jurisdiction over certain water and land rights, it makes us be able to do things differently or complement other initiatives in the region. I don't know if that answered that correctly, but our mission is to, create opportunities to enhance, commerce, recreation, fisheries, commercial fisheries, and then the other traditional ocean industries, but also to be an environmental steward. So our job is to create opportunities for companies and others to use our water and land rights, but also to be an environmental steward and make sure that we're doing everything in an environmentally sustainable way.
Right. Very, very interesting indeed. So you just mentioned a little bit about your role as a port and which role you play in your region on the west coast of California. And could you maybe share a little bit more about what kind of innovation you're talking about? So particularly in the context of like real significant development plans such as wind turbine farms and electrification of ports. And then maybe share some insights that would be interesting to startups in this field.
Absolutely. So we, as a maritime port, we share it as related to the wind energy sector. We are in the most southern part of California in San Diego. And so, but the majority of the wind activity from a port's perspective is happening at the northern end of the state because there's more wind there than there is here in San Diego. But as far as our place in that supply chain, we have marine terminals that are not really your standard cargo terminals like the Port of Los Angeles or Long Beach or other larger ports in California that take in cargo and container ships more than we do. Instead, our terminals they service what we call break bulk, so things that don't really fit in containers. So like the blades of a windmill as an example. So our place in the supply chain is is really some of that logistics, front-end logistics and transport of, you know, the parts to the other terminals to build out the wind turbines themselves and then to install them. So we are part of the supply chain, but we're not a main, we don't have a huge role in that particular piece. Maritime decarbonization is a huge bucket for us. I mean, we have over 800 tenants and we're a very, very busy port with traditional maritime terminals, but also in shipbuilding and one of the largest home ports of the US Navy in the country. But we also have tourism and cruise ships and hotels and restaurants. So there's a lot of activity on the bay and traditional maritime industries in, underserved communities or adjacent to underserved communities that, we're looking at improving all of that stuff. So our focus has been on, we have a maritime clean air strategy, which the focus is on reducing carbon emissions. And our focus is on mostly electrifying our entire supply chain from boats and shore power to, battery electric trucks and other things. So that's already happening and a big focus of the port. But through the port's Blue Economy Incubator, the port created an aquaculture and blue technology program, and underneath that, a Blue Economy Incubator 9 years ago to look at environmental and economic opportunities in the aquaculture and the blue tech space. So the incubator was created to allow the port to be able to partner with early stage companies in the aquaculture and blue tech space and really offer the core value proposition of facilitating pilot projects. So we're basically offering, in almost all cases, funding, but we have subject matter expertise across a variety of departments from aquaculture to maritime decarbonization as just an example, but there are many other buckets. But to be able to, invest in a company and then get them all the permits and the leases that they need to put their technology in the water, we look to design mutually beneficial pilot projects that allow them to put their technology in the water or part of our land and make a strong case study for commercialization through a pilot project where they can position themselves to scale after they do a pilot project with us. So we're small and we only have 10 companies in our portfolio. 40% of our portfolio is from overseas, not from the United States. So an entrance into the California market is really important, as it's difficult to permit anything in California. So if you can get your technology in the water here, you could most likely do it anywhere. So I'll just stop there if that's answered that question, but I'm happy to describe some of the, the technologies that we've been supporting.
Yes, wonderful. And so many different buckets and different activities. Let's talk a little bit about financing. Given the high costs associated with maritime infrastructure and technology, what financing mechanisms or incentives are available to support those blue economy ventures and that you mentioned in San Diego or at the port?
Yeah, I can say, so at our port, we are, so we're a public agency as well. So we are allowed to take taxes from California citizens to fund our programs. But we don't do that. And instead, we have over 800 tenants that lease land and water rights from us. And we take a revenue share off of those businesses. And that provides budget to the port to operate on an annual basis. So our budgets are allocated annually. And we have a portion of funding that's set aside to support companies and invest in them, for an expected return on investment. But where our average investment is about $250,000 US dollars. But having said that, the larger port infrastructure projects, which are, way in the multi-million dollar range, are coming from primarily federal and state grants. There's a lot, at least in the US, there's a lot of incentives for, decarbonization and money to support that across ports in the US. And that applies to us at the Port of San Diego as well. We're also seeing an uptick of interest from large funds, philanthropically based funds, or other types of VC funds that are looking at partnering with not just our port, but other ports and supporting, some of this decarb effort at scale. So I would say that's what's happening here in San Diego, but we're seeing that, you know, pop up across the country and the world as well.
Right. And now my last question, really two questions. How can innovation in the blue economy be fostered without compromising both environmental protection on the one hand and regulatory compliance that we talked about on the other? And along those same lines, what strategies have you seen that have proven effective in balancing this need for regulation with the encouragement of innovation in the blue economy that you are
Yeah, I
encouraging?
would say, I'll just use the port example again. We're a large, you know, entity in San Diego with permitting and regulatory rights and environmental stewardship that we have to follow, right? So within our regulations comes strong environmental standards already. So we're allowed, because of our role in the local ecosystem, we're allowed to permit and test technologies in an environmental sustainable way. For new technologies that don't really have any rules yet, we're part of state and federal, you know, policy development for all types of industries, from aquaculture to, you know, wind farming. So trying to make sure that, and then the environmental review process, which is part of permitting and regulations in the United States, and especially in California, is very, very strict. So we can't do anything. We cannot get permits without strong environmental regulations already, or compliance and protocols that are in place as part of the permitting, as part of the permits that operators get.
All right. All right. Well, that's it for today. Paula, thank you so much for joining us at the BlueTech Summit.
Thank you so much for allowing me to join. It was really wonderful to be here. Thank you.